Classic World of Warcraft is a game that is full of mystery and exploration. A game built in the lost style that encouraged the journey, not necessarily the destination. And with the release of anniversary servers, I finally got to experience that firsthand as I leveled through Classic World of Warcraft for the first time, and eventually culminating in my journey of reaching the final level of 60. Now, let's fast forward 8 months. We are now sadly ending the life cycle of Classic World of Warcraft once again. And although it is bittersweet, do not cry, my friends, because after Classic comes for many the best expansion that World of Warcraft has ever seen. Welcome, my friends, to my journey into the Outlands. Last time, our story saw us rise to glory as a lowly orc warrior. This time, however, we're leaving all of that rage behind, and we're going to be stepping into the plains of Azeroth as the first race that I ever played when I started all those years ago. The mighty Tauren. Every great classic WoW story starts right here at the character creation screen. And any great story obviously needs a great protagonist with a unique name. So everybody, meet my new Tauren shaman, Beefmans. Now there's something so magical to me about those intro cinematic moments on a new character. You really never know what's going to happen after you end that cinematic, but every moment feels full of possibility. And I think it's that moment that really made me fall in love with the style of old school MMOs in the first place. Beefman's journey begins now in the peaceful fields of Mulgore, where green plains and open skies feel worlds apart from the hellish red landscape of Durotar. Like every starter zone, we started off by having to decimate the local wildlife, punish a few coyotes here, take out a few tall striders there. But it did not take long for me to realize just how different playing a shaman feels compared to my warriors. If I ever even looked at a mob on my warrior that was, say, more than 2 levels higher than my character, I would basically immediately fall over dead. If I tried to fight more than 2 mobs at a time, yeah, I was enjoying a nice little corpse walk back to my body. And that pretty much persisted and seemed to sum up the warrior leveling experience that I had all the way up until I would say the mid-40s. So you could imagine my excitement the first time I could attack 2 mobs at once and just heal through their damage. And after finally defeating the lower level creatures around the camp, we were sent to deal with a quillboar problem that was getting out of hand. And once arriving, not even their shamans could match my elemental power. I, at level 5, started to basically feel unstoppable. But it was that confidence that almost got me killed already. I quickly learned that although leveling my shaman warrior felt like completely different games, this is still not retail, and I can still get my butt kicked while leveling from random mobs. And after narrowly escaping our first death at the hands of those monstrous piggies, it was time to buckle down. I mean, we're only level 5, and things are definitely only going to get tougher from here. Now, back at Camp Narache, I was hailed as a hero for clearing out the quillboars. But there was no time to rest. It was time for our first shaman-only quest. After a short trek, we reached a giant ceremonial pillar, and I summoned an even bigger earth elemental, who apparently blessed me with the power of earth. Honestly, I'm still not sure what that means, but hey, I'm really not going to question it because this meant we got our first totem already. And with that, all the quests from the first starter zone were finished. So this meant we were about to trek on what felt like a never-ending walk to finally reach Bloodhoof Village, the second quest hub. Upon arriving at the village, I grabbed all the available quests, shook off the odd name of the village, and set back out into the open plains. Now, with all these starter quests behind us, it was time to really see what being a shaman was all about. And over the course of the next couple hours, we knocked some sense into some goblins, spent what felt like 3 hours escorting a ghost wolf, and ran into this Tauren that was obviously dabbling in some suspicious dark arts. We got chased by a murderous pack of gnolls, and all of this is basically just your average day in Mulgore. But at the end of all of these events, we were finally level 10. That meant that it was time to choose our spec. And although playing an elemental shaman really does sound like a lot of fun, the idea of dual-wielding 2 massive one-handed weapons in Burning Crusade, it was just too tempting for me to pass up. But let me know what you guys think down below. Should I go elemental or should I play enhancement in the Burning Crusade? With our path currently chosen, it was time to get back to questing. And just as I was about to set out for our next quest, we ran into our first rare mob. As I was about to face the legendary beast, I was attacked from behind by a cougar. And yes, I've dealt with plenty of cougars before. That's normally in a bar setting, and that's a story for another time. Now, with this cougar taken care of, it was finally time. And our fight was glorious. A tale for the ages. And when the dust had finally cleared and settled, Mazaranche lay defeated, and somehow had a brand new cloak upgrade. Where it was hiding? Your guess is as good as mine. Now, after the fight, let's fast forward a little bit, and we're back at Bloodhoof Village, the new class-specific quests awaiting our return. So, after grabbing the quests and all my new skills, it was time to head out. But apparently, my fame had already started spreading across the plains of Mulgore. Well, that was both uncomfortable and lovely at the same time. Our first quest involved a run-in with the Alliance, and surprise, surprise, these evil bastards were trying to ravage these sacred lands for our precious metals and ores. And once the dwarves were dealt with outside, I entered the goblin and human mine. These guys came for Tauren metals, and they got to taste some Tauren metals alright. I actually ended up snagging my first green item off these guys, and unfortunately it was an item that I couldn't use. But I was hopeful that it would fetch at least a decent amount of silver off the auction house. And upon leaving the cave, I was immediately ambushed by a pack of cowardly Alliance, and I honestly nearly died, and I probably should have. Thankfully, my Earthbind totem came in clutch once again, and on my warrior, I would 1000% have died. Moments like these are why I'm really starting to love the utility of being a shaman. And after turning in the quest, we were officially ready to set out for the Tauren capital city of Thunderbluff. A city so iconic to classic World of Warcraft with its brick walkways and towering cliffs, it has a lifetime full of memories for anyone who's ever been a horde. After frolicking around the city and gathering the flight path, as well as doing some much needed character maintenance, I gathered up all the quests for RFC, making sure to also pay my respects to this fallen orc brethren at the base of the flight path. This meant that it was time for us to leave Mulgore behind, and it was time to head to the largest gathering of degenerates since Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 lobbies. The Barrens. Alright, sure, maybe it's full of some, questionable characters, but nothing feels more iconic for leveling a horde than the Barrens. After traveling north through the higher level zones, I finally reached the crossroads. And the moment I arrived, I had to pause and admire this absolute unit of an orc warrior, standing proud in front of the inn. I vowed to one day be as cool as him. Now, only time will tell if that's true. Being this close, I had to take a short break from questing in the Barrens to go and visit the horde capital of Orgrimmar. There's just something magical about standing before its war-torn gates for the first time on your new character, and walking through Orgrimmar's crowded streets and seeing all of these max-level versions of your class and other classes can be all the motivation that you need to chase those goals that feel impossible when you were first looking at the character screen. While in Orgrimmar, I also stepped into the War Chief's throne room and learned of the Burning Blade cult's dastardly plans. They intended to seize Orgrimmar from within. So with our new mission in hand, off we went to teach these misguided warlocks what true magical power looks like. All while trying to snag one of their insignias along the way. Now this journey would take me over an hour to find these insignias. I eventually teamed up with an orc shaman named Kaboom and a troll mage named Tanbanka, helping each of them find their insignia in under 10 minutes. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the insignia was ours. This meant it was time for us to head back to Orgrimmar and take on our first dungeon. That's right, my friends. It was time for a little RFC. Now, the group actually came together quickly, and after a nervous walk through the Cleft of Shadow, we had arrived. Now, I'll admit, to save time hunting for a group, I didn't really queue up as a DPS. I took advantage of being a shaman and decided to cosplay as a healer. At this point, the only heals I have are just different ranks of healing touch. I don't have any heals over time or any buffs, just one heal. So we were gonna have to get crafty and basically just hope for no major pools or accidents, which literally happened like 30 seconds into the run, when we had an accidental mob pool and me simultaneously running out of mana, resulting in a very close call right off the rip. Literally moments later, my big Tauren butt pulled another mob, and I literally didn't even notice it until I had already filled the threat meters with a bunch of healer aggro. Needless to say, I didn't survive that one. So this meant if we were playing hardcore, our official journey would have ended right here. And of course, I'm the only class in the dungeon with a res, so this meant a nice little corpse run back. 5 minutes and a few laughs later, we were back and at the location of the first dungeon quest. Now this quest involved avenging one of our Tauren brothers who was slain by the vicious Trogg, Ogleflint. And I don't really consider this guy much of a boss fight, more so probably just a tougher variant of the version of Troggs that we've defeated up until this point. And although his defeat didn't reward us with any loot, the questline after would reward us with a decent pair of bracers and some really good experience, so everything was worth it. And after his defeat, we ended up fighting deeper into the chasm until we reached a Dreadlord whose bark was actually way worse than his bite. I would say he was definitely stronger than Ogleflint, but the only dangerous part of this whole thing was if you accidentally pulled another mob during the fight. After we defeated him, he ended up dropping a nice cape upgrade, and although we were hopeful, we didn't end up winning. I did remember to loot him and grab his heart for the quest. This meant our next challenge was fighting through some more densely packed mobs on the way to the next quest boss, a satyr named Basilan. And although this boss was likely the second strongest in the entire dungeon, he literally only dropped 5 linen cloth. This meant that with his defeat, we only had one last remaining boss, Jirkosh the Invoker. But we decided to cheese things a little bit and drop down on him like a medieval band of Navy SEALs to avoid having to fight all of those unnecessary mobs. And honestly, within no time, the evil warlock's reign had come to a violent end. This meant that our first dungeon was completed, and we were to be rewarded with a much needed upgrade, the legendary Staff of Orgrimmar. With my amazing new weapon in hand, it was finally time to head back and complete the class quest we picked up all those moons ago in Bloodhoof Village. But first, I had to grab my skinning skill increase, trying to stay ahead of the game here and try and line my pockets with an extra little bit of silver. Now, high atop a mountain stood a brazier, home to the spirits of fire, and with my special summoning dance, I forced the elementals into our mortal plane, where I had to quickly dispatch of them and grab a glowing ember. And with this new elemental trinket in hand, I had to return back to the Barrens, back to Cranel Fiss, to earn my very first fire totem. The elements began to recognize me as a wielder of great power and one capable of mastering their ways. It was finally time to get back to the Baron quest that I'd been putting off this entire time. And along the way, I ran into a mage named Balward, who kindly invited me to his party right before he killed an NPC that actually takes a ridiculously long time to respond, so I was very thankful. And after thanking him, I went for a swim, wash the stench off my coat, and explore the forgotten pools. After a little bit of enjoying myself in the swimming pools, it was time for some much needed character maintenance back at Thunderbluff. And to my surprise, a day or two later, this poor orc's body is still lying at the base of the flight path. You'd think the guards or somebody would have moved him by now. I mean, he's really starting to stink up the place and he's scaring the newbies out of here. While there, I also picked up the quest for one of the biggest and longest lasting upgrades we'd probably see for a while, the Crescent Staff, which meant it was time to enter one of my favorite and most memorable dungeons from my early days in WoW, the Wailing Caverns. Now, at level 16, we were definitely a bit early for this dungeon, But it didn't take long to assemble a ragtag group of misfits. I knew better than to try and roll as a healer this time around, especially being level 16. I just knew I wasn't going to be able to keep up with the mobs, and luckily I was able to queue as a DPS. Now, the hardest part of this dungeon isn't really the mobs for me. It's not the boss fights. It's trying to figure out where the hell I am and not missing any of these ridiculous jumps. Now, this run ended up being one of the best dungeon runs I've ever done in regards to loot and drops. We even scored this BOE Prospector Axe, a seriously badass two-hander that had our Orc Warrior grinning from ear to ear. But he wasn't the only one that was getting lucky. I mean, this dungeon dropped multiple upgrades, not just for me, but pretty much everyone in the group. Except for this rogue, who somehow managed to get his feelings hurt because I snagged a set of gloves he wanted. There I was, sitting in literal rags, staring at him all decked out in gear that he admitted to sending over from his main, complaining to me. Well, I guess you can't please everyone, I suppose. So regardless, we kept pushing forward, cutting down every member of the Fang, until we finally reached Verdan the Ever-Living, a level 21 elite moss giant who can hit your tank for massive damage if you're not careful. Now, thankfully, we managed to take him down without too much of a hassle. And surprisingly, the group was actually up for tackling the escort quest and taking down the optional Murloc boss, Mutinous the Devourer. During the fight, Scribjelly, the troll mage, actually got a pair of white leather shoulders and without a single word, immediately traded them to me for nothing. What a true gentleman and a scholar. This meant that we had finally received one of the most iconic upgrades to your armor pieces in World of Warcraft, our first set of shoulders. And then, out of nowhere, out of the murky waters, popped the ugliest creature I've come across. Well, besides dwarves, Mutinous the Devourer. The fight went on longer than any of the previous boss fights, but eventually we persevered and we defeated him. He ended up dropping a beastly new blue chest piece upgrade for the same warrior who got the axe earlier, and a nice belt upgrade for the crying rogue. That meant that we had completed the dungeon, and with it finished the quest that unlocked our brand new weapon. It was time to retire the Staff of Orgrimmar and wield the Crescent Staff. With our new amazing weapon in hand, I figured it was time to run back through the caverns one more time, because it just never feels like you can get enough of the Deviate Hides for the quest in one run through. This second run through of Wailing Caverns wasn't nearly as loot heavy, but it flew by compared to the first. And by the time we finished this second run through, we were already level 19, halfway to level 20. It was time to temporarily leave Barrens behind us for a while and set our sights on the scary peaks of Stone Mountain. And that, my friends, is the perfect stopping point for our first episode back. I can't tell you how hyped I am for the release of Burning Crusade. I've missed you all so much, and it feels amazing to be back in the lands of Azeroth. And hey, while we're back on YouTube, I wanted to let you guys know I'll also be streaming every week over on Twitch, and maybe even dual streaming here on YouTube. I'll put the links down below in the description, so make sure to swing by, drop a follow, and come hang out. And I can't wait to see you all there. The last episode saw us clearing Wailing Caverns and walking away with the legendary Crescent Staff. Now, in this episode, we have two goals. One is reach level 30, and two is to get as close as possible to the gold needed for our first mount. Now, we start off in Stone Talon Mountains, our next questing zone. And it started out rather quietly, until it didn't. While I was clearing out some Ventrico loggers, a scummy little Alliance druid snuck up behind me and tried to jump me mid-fight. But what he didn't know is that your boy was just a sliver away from leveling up. So immediately upon killing the logger, with only a fraction of health left, I am dinged and returned to full health and mana. This meant that our fight was now fair. So, what did the druid do like many Alliance do in this situation? He ran away. Now, I knew, with the threat of being jumped by Alliance at any point, I had to return to Orgrimmar and immediately get my new level 20 abilities. We're at the Shaman trainer, and as I gathered my new abilities, I noticed that I now had access to Frost Shock and Ghost Wolf, two abilities that surely would have helped me end that fight and chase down that running druid. So after leaving the trainer, I also noticed that I was rocking two world buffs. I figured,
instead of letting them go to waste, now I'd make a brief stop at the auction house, grab one of those chrono booms so that I could store these guys for later on. With our abilities trained and our buffs stored, I decided to do one last Wailing Caverns run because I still didn't get my 10-slot bag from that stupid Deviate Hide quest. The run was pretty clean. There weren't any wipes. Unfortunately, there weren't really any upgrades, but we did finish the Deviate Hides and we secured the 10-slot bag, which was going to be a massive upgrade to our character. Now, we're back in Stone Talon, and it was pretty clear. After finishing the logger quests, I was pretty much underleveled for the next stretch of the quests that are available, so I decided to leave it behind for now and move on to another questing zone, the beautiful forests of Ashenvale. And honestly guys, this zone wasted no time in humbling me once again. These outrunners, they were relentless. They were constantly kicking me right before getting a heal off or jumping out of stealth at the least opportune moments. They were really just a slog to deal with. So mid-struggle, a passing mage must have noticed this and handed me a couple stacks of water. Completely unusable for my level, but the sentiment was greatly appreciated. So once finishing this quest, the truth was pretty obvious. In an attempt to get into some new scenery, I had obviously left the Barrens a little bit too early. I did, however, get an important quest for later that would reward us with a new pair of boots that we were probably going to use well into the 30s. But just as I was sitting there thinking about where should I quest next? Should I go back to the Barrens? An invitation popped up for a dungeon. Not just any dungeon, but Shadowfang Keep. So it was time for us to cross into the Eastern Kingdoms for the first time. We're trading the dust and the sun of Durotar for the fog and the rot of Silverpine Forest. Now, I always loved the complete contrast of spending so much time in the Barrens and then heading over to the spooky Halloween feel of Silverpine and Tears Fall. I will say that Shadowfang Keep is incredibly deceptive. It starts out easy enough, then quietly ramps up, ending with enemies that were 8 levels higher than the first pulls, which is bad news for tanks and healers, but not so bad for me. I'm just there to deal some damage. Now the payoff can be huge though. This dungeon has some of the best low-level items money can buy. And at this point, I didn't really want the items to use. I kinda wanted them just to sell in the auction house for some mount money. And throughout the run, I did manage to grab a few upgrades. Nothing too crazy though. None of those expensive BOEs that I was hoping for. However, I will say it's been an absolute blast having skinning as one of my professions because I do manage to make quite a bit of gold along the way. Eventually, all of the group's hard work culminated in the vicious final fight with the dark wizard, Aragol, who is supposedly the father of all these werewolves. How he fathered them? Well, during the fight, the sick bastard must have convinced the tank that I tasted delicious, because before anyone could react, she turned on me. Claws out, no hesitation. I went down, trying to buy the group time to recover, but the pressure never let up. They did, however, hold it together, and thankfully, Aragol finally fell. Now, Beefmans may have died that day on that castle floor, but the group walked away victorious, and I'll take that trade every time. After being resurrected and heading out the entrance, I immediately ran over to hand in Aragol's head to get our very first ring. A nice blue one at that. Now with Shadowfang behind me, I pushed into one of the most hostile zones in Azeroth, Hillsbrad Foothills, a place where low-level Horde are treated like target dummies for board level 60 Alliance. My experience pretty much matched the reputation. Not long after starting the quest, a mage and a paladin jumped me and killed me in cold blood. And if that wasn't enough, I had to witness one of the filthiest things I've ever seen the Alliance do. And I literally just came from a dungeon that involved a dude banging wolves. After resurrecting, making my way back, and getting a little revenge on some Alliance farmhands and soldiers, we were now level 24, and I figured, I'd better finish a quest that I have been putting off for quite some time now. It was time to face a journey every shaman in Classic WoW remembers, earning your first water totem. Now the quest starts out very simple. A sage outside Ratchet sends you to speak with an orc atop a mountain in the Barrens. And once arriving, this orc will send you down on a little mission because apparently she's too important to walk down and fetch her own water from the puddle below. And once back with her precious water, she then sent me right back to those cursed lands of Hillsbrad we had just left. Thank God I had remembered to grab the flight path while I was there. After returning to the Eastern Kingdoms once again and reaching Terran Mill, I gathered her oh so precious water that she demanded, and returned, only to be told that that wasn't even good enough. Next stop, Ashenvale. I took a brief pause from being an errand boy, and I decided somewhere along the way that I wanted to finish the Warsong questline from earlier and secure those boots I was talking about. After finishing up this little back and forth questline, which really just involves going to Booty Bay, grabbing some saw blades, and going to the auction house and buying a gun, we got our boots. With that out of the way, I figured it was time to get back to being an errand boy. Now, after fighting through droves of hostile elementals and collecting what I had thought and hoped was the final sample, I returned to Ratchet, only to be told I needed approval from the water spirits themselves that were somewhere secluded off the coast of Silverpine. So once again, we're back in the Eastern Kingdoms. I was questioning, why couldn't I have just stopped in there and said hi to these guys, see if I passed their little vibe check while I was already over there? So once again, we crossed that damn sea. Upon arriving, I dealt with the lesser elementals. I spoke to their leader and finally ended this circus. We were now back in Ratchet and we were rewarded with the more than well earned water totem. Now at this point, we were already now level 25 and had achieved 3 of our 4 totems. I'm not gonna lie guys, it's feeling pretty good. That same feeling followed me to the coast of Ashenvale, where the ocean swallowed the land and the black fathom deeps waited below. Now these caverns were damp and they were dim and they were filled with echoes of things that were fairly scary. Early on, luck did smile upon us. Blue offhand dropped immediately off the first Murloc that we killed. Unfortunately, not very useful for us, but hopefully the party member that won it can get a little bit of some change off of it on the auction house. And as we pushed deeper, I couldn't help but think back to this season of Discovery and all of the fun we had there. As we moved deeper, we ran into the first boss, Gamurum Ra, Gamaru, Gamu Ra, the giant angry turtle. Now, he is much less challenging than his Sod raid counterpart, and he didn't really have much to offer in terms of a fight. The same could actually be said for the next 2 bosses, the Naga witch Severus and the Murloc boss Galahast. Both turned out to be relatively tame in their fights and their loot drops. Thankfully, Severus did drop a nice bow upgrade for the hunter. Now, things do get a little bit more challenging, however, when we finally stumbled upon the evil warlock, Kelrus. His challenge was his ability to put multiple party members to sleep periodically. Now this could spell disaster for your group if he had managed to put both, say, the tank and the healer to sleep at the same time. However, thankfully, not both of ours were put to sleep simultaneously, and we were able to put this warlock down. Now upon looting him, he dropped his fairly sought after staff. Now I will say, while technically this staff would have been a tiny bit of an upgrade for us in the DPS category, I then found out that the healer actually needed it, so I decided to just pass on it because this was probably going to carry him well into the Scarlet Monastery. This meant that only one boss remained in the dungeon, the Vile Serpent, Akumai. Now, I think it's important to note that at this point, we've been running with essentially a healer druid that is masqueraded as a tank. And it's been very apparent as I've been pulling threat 75% of the time on all bosses and mobs. Now, unfortunately, this happened again on Akumai, but it was during his enraged phase. So, as you can probably imagine, this spelled another death for Beefmuns at the hand of a dungeon's final boss. I mean, at this point, we're starting to bat 1,000 on dying to the final bosses of every dungeon we run. Now, thankfully, once again, the group was able to persevere, and it culminated in another dungeon success. Now, at this point in our journey, we were just a sliver away from level 27, and it was time to enter one of the caves that gave me such a hard time on my warrior, and one you probably couldn't pay me to enter on a hardcore character, the Thistle Fur Hold. Now, these teddy bears may seem cute and cuddly, but they have a very nasty enrage mechanic along with tightly packed numbers that that respawn very quickly. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, even though I had these guys out leveled by 3 to 4 levels at this point, I knew this wasn't going to be a cakewalk, even on my shaman. Eventually, after fighting my way into the inner depths, I was working towards gathering the troll charms for the quest that sent me here. Now, just as I deemed level 27, I ran into this hunter, Jazz Pepsi, and decided to group up. And we started to run an absolute train on these poor misunderstood teddy bears. Eventually, after gathering the remainder of the troll charms for both of us and killing the remaining numbers, we fought deeper into the cave and started the escort quest. Now, this escort quest is a little bit different than any of my other experience. This druid basically said, "Screw you guys, I'm out of here." And he left us to fight the teddy bears by ourselves. Which at one point, I swear there was like 10 of these guys. There is absolutely no way I could have survived this quest by myself. Eventually, we fought hard and we vanquished these ravenous creatures, and we made our way back to Splinter Tree Post. We even managed to kill Sharp Talon along the way for a nice little bonus quest experience. So, this meant in just a short amount of time, we were already halfway to 28, and it was time for one of my favorite questing zones, the Thousand Needles. Taking the iconic elevator down and arriving at Freeland Post really has always cemented in my head that you're getting closer to the mid-game of Classic WoW. We were then dispatched on the first segments of the zone's quest, taking down what felt like hundreds of my race's sworn enemies, the Centaur. Now, one thing up to this point that has been on my mind for a while was trying to get away from using two-handed weapons, because I'll be honest, I basically did that for over 100 hours on my Warriors Classic WoW journey, and the aesthetic of using one-handers has always been my personal favorite and something that really drove me to choosing an enhancement shaman in the first place. So I did a little bit of research, and it turns out shaman leveling is definitely viable with a fast one hand and a shield combination. Now, not only is it quicker, but your survivability jumps through the roof. So joining up with another BFD with the chance at a new blue dagger was basically a no-brainer. And just like before, we made our way through the depths. This time, however, I did not die in Akumai, and I convinced the group to join me in the attempt to kill this hidden dino that drops the dagger. And if I had not looked this up, I would have had no idea this little guy was hiding below the temple. Now, of course, as is the case it feels like, whenever I go out and intentionally target an upgrade, it did not drop. However, I will say this, when it comes to these things, I would rather the item I'm searching for not drop at all than for it to drop and then lose it in a roll. So, what's a broken-hearted boy to do when he heads home without his drops he's searching for? I'll tell you, you immediately head to the auction house and angrily spend your mount gold on whatever you can get. So, after buying a new shield and a new dagger, and doing some much-needed character maintenance, it was time to fly back to the flight path near Black Fathom Depths, hand in our completed quest from the dungeon, and start training our dagger skills. Now that is when all hell broke loose. Now, I didn't think anything of it when I first watched this level 26 rogue kill this level 30 rogue. I just gave him a nice cheer, and I gave him a heal while he was giving himself a bite to eat to recover. Now, 2 minutes later, it turns out that that same level 30 that he had killed had called in some friends that somehow were nearby. What happened next was an all-out bloodbath between us and the Alliance. Now, I had to start gathering some numbers to even things out. And once things became more fair, things started to sway in our favor. And I have to say, nothing in this game is more satisfying than getting revenge against gankers and watching them run away in fear. And after doing some, I'll admit, less than reputable actions and getting my fill of revenge, it was time to leave all this chaos and negative energy behind us and head back to Thousand Needles. And upon returning to the Needles, our task was to take out some wyverns and smash their eggs, which, I'm not gonna lie to you, kind of felt a little weird as a Tauren who supposedly loves nature. Now, during this questionable mission, I joined up with this warlock in order to help escort this Tauren back to safety through droves and droves of these angry wyvern attacks. As we fought our way through tooth and nail, we eventually arrived at a safe distance away from the nest, and we said goodbye to the Tauren and the warlock. And I never really expected to see him again. That wasn't until half an hour later when we both randomly stumbled upon each other in order to take out this dangerous elite panther. Even with the two of us, the panther put up a hell of a fight, and I think this panther was foreshadowing us for the jungles that await us in the future. And it was a good thing that we both had met up, because honestly, I don't think I would have been able to take this cat down 1v1. After, we said goodbye to the warlock and thanked him for his help with these quests. I was then lucky enough to run into this centaur messenger and get access to a little quest turn-in. This meant that it was time for what is surely one of the scariest quests for someone who would be playing hardcore in Thousand Needles. A little quest you might know that's called a Test of Fate, which literally involves you basically jumping off a cliff in hopes of being saved at the last second. With these completed, it was time to hand in the good amount of quests that we had finished and keep a Tauren from being executed by centaur assassins after turning them in. Now, after the centaur's failed assassination attempt and all the quests turned in, we were already super close to reaching level 29. And with the quests in this zone starting to dwindle down to nothing, I figured it was time to head back to Stone Talon to quickly turn in and finish those quests that we had forgotten about and hit level 29. This was going to be the final level of this episode's challenge. This also granted us access to Razorfen Crawl, a dungeon filled with quite a good deal of experience and some really decent drops that could carry us well into the Scarlet Monastery. And after spending some time in the queue and joining up with a band of adventurers, we set out to rid the barons of this evil piggy infestation once and for all. And we fought through their vine-covered prisons, taking the fight straight to the Quillbore, and not even their mightiest champions were able to stop us. I even was able to snag a great pair of new pants from this pigzilla that is going to be with us for quite some time. Eventually, this all culminated into a fight with their leader, the evil, wicked crone, Chargla. And although I will admit she is a mighty witch in her own right, her magical powers were not strong enough to save her, and upon her defeat, she let out an ominous warning of some supposed new allies that were going to avenge her clan's death. Only time could tell what this could mean. Immediately after, however, we decided to complete the escort quest and get just a little bit more of extra experience out of the dungeon. Once this goblin that we had escorted had been successfully pulled through all the endless mobs of Quillbore, we all decided to make our separate ways. This meant that RFK was completed. We snagged a great new upgrade, and we were now halfway through level 29. So, with the finish line right there on the horizon, I decided to head back into the Needles and finish up one of the last few remaining quests. Honestly, this is probably the hardest quest in the entire zone. You have to enter the Rogue Feather Den and slay the Harpy Queen, Grenka. Just the fight to get halfway through this infested cave was a challenge in itself. I would not even have attempted this quest on my warrior until I had outleveled this by probably 4 to 5 levels. And the hard part hadn't even started yet. Right when those thoughts were creeping in my head about giving up and maybe moving on to another zone, a light shined through the tunnel in the form of this maid. And immediately, we both joined forces. And almost immediately, he shared the sentiment that I had been feeling all along. Together, we fought through the remainder of the cave until we found their hidden food caches. And I found it somewhat suspicious not to find Grenka here waiting for us. And it all became clear as I destroyed the food caches, and immediately we could hear a stirring coming down the halls. This led to an all-out brawl between us and the remaining Harpy clan. And if it wasn't for each other, I don't know if either one of us was ever going to make it out of this cave alive. And as the dust finally settled, the tides of the battle turned in our favor as Grenka and her ravenous subordinates were defeated. With this quest completed, it was time for us to say goodbye to my favorite questing zone and head into the Shimmering Flats. Along the way, we completed our goal of this episode of finally hitting level 30. Now, although we are numerically halfway to 60, this is where the real challenge is only just beginning. Now, with the first goal of the video out of the way, and it getting pretty late, I decided it's probably time to log off for the night. But not before I made my way down to Tanaris and grabbed the flight path. Also deciding to park myself inside of the inn because you really can't give up on that rested experience. We're also sitting at roughly 35 gold for our mount requirement. But things are about to get a lot easier for us in that regard. Because immediately following the release of this episode, Blizzard will be launching the TBC pre-patch. So that means this is effectively going to be our last video that we will have in true Vanilla Classic. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who's come along for the wild ride we've had this last year. discovering and enjoying classic World of Warcraft together. And the love and the support that you've all shown me truly does mean the world to me, more than words could ever say. So as always, I'll leave you with this. I love you all, and this is Deadmans, and I'll see you in the next video.
Guys, the Dark Portal opens in 3 weeks, and I'm nowhere near level 60. Last time, this journey took me 2 months. Will Beefmans be ready, or will he be left behind in vanilla? Our journey into the Outlands continues. Last time, we had just reached level 30. After making our way into the white sands of the Salt Flats, we logged off for the night. But I had no idea what was going to be in store for us when we returned. You see, in this episode, everything is about to change. The original classic World of Warcraft that we've all come to know and love is no longer the same. With the release of the TBC pre-patch, many things in WoW have been completely rewritten. You have a huge list of changes, all the way from major class balancing and overhauls, to the entire experience requirements from level 1 to 60 being squished down dramatically. And of course, how could I forget the introduction of the Draenei and the Blood Elves? So obviously, we had to leave Beefmans behind to become Belfmans. Okay, I'm just kidding, but I'm pretty sure 92% of Night Slayer's population is now a Blood Elf. The list goes on of everything that's changed, but none as impactful to our specific journey as this. That's right, my friends. Shaman literally become World of Warcraft's coolest class. And if you don't agree with me, you can meet me in the comments and we can fight about it. So, in today's episode, we set out to achieve 2 major milestones on the Shaman. 1, getting our first mount, and more importantly, reaching level 40 and becoming Azeroth's coolest class. At the time of this recording, we only had an hour before the pre-patch went live. So while dishing out some punishment to the creatures in the Salt Flats, I had an idea. I decided what better way to celebrate the pre-patch going live than to head to Orgrimmar and celebrate with the rest of the Horde. And I will say, I was not disappointed. I don't know if I've ever seen Orgrimmar this lively. What started out as just a mass gathering of people quickly dissolved into absolute chaos. I mean, can we get a few condolences in the comments for all of the FPS that I saw die here today? And just as things were really starting to ramp up into an absolute chaotic mayhem, everything faded to black. This meant we were now assigned with the hardest challenge World of Warcraft players have ever had to overcome: not being able to play WoW for an entire day. Now, if we thought we had it bad, my heart truly goes out to the 3 interns over at Blizzard HQ that were held responsible for getting the pre-patch up and running. I can only imagine how many death threats these poor guys got over the server maintenance having to be extended a few more times. I will say though, seeing all the memes on the Classic WoW subreddit, it was pretty hilarious. But after 30-something hours, we were back. So after logging on, I immediately headed over to Eversong Woods just to see the BL starting zone for myself. I assumed that there'd be, a couple people that wanted to make some Blood Elves. And well, let's just say I thought that Orgrimmar was chaos. This was on a whole nother level. I mean, if you were foolish enough to try and do the starter zone quests, you were going to be waiting in line for hours. After walking around and deciding that I had seen enough, it was time to get back to the chamois. Now, back onto Beefmans, it was time to enter what I like to call the Red Prison. And of course, I'm talking about the Scarlet Monastery. The amount of upgrades every class can get from all of the different wings is insane. And with each run taking roughly 30 minutes or less, you can get quite a bit of experience rather quickly. So it's likely that every character will run these dungeons multiple times. First up on our list was to try and tackle the graveyard. And although the dungeon has more of a caster-focused loot table, it's still filled with plenty of chances at good BOEs and plenty of experience. Now, after finishing the first boss, we actually managed to snag a nice weapon upgrade in the form of a pair of brass knuckles. And I mean, what's cooler than punching people in the face as a giant man cow? After grabbing the upgrade, the group and I continued pushing deeper through the cemetery and ended up facing the final boss, Blood Mage Thalnos, who ended up dropping a nice set of shoulders and a necklace. And although the necklace was an upgrade and we tried, we unfortunately continued our bad luck and lost the role. After things going so well in the graveyard, the group and I, well, we got a little cocky and we tried the more difficult library wing. And although we tried, it turns out we weren't ready.
LOL, same, this one might be a little high still.
So with our first run of Scarlet Monastery completed, I decided to head over to Bloodhood Village and try and get our first mount. As I didn't really know exactly how much gold it was going to cost, I figured we would just wing it and find out. Now, once in the village, it wasn't until after getting the training that I found out that we were actually 6 gold shy of getting our Kodo. So unfortunately, Ghost Wolf form wasn't going to be retired just yet. After finishing up handing in some straggler quests all over Azeroth, we returned to the monastery to take down the library with a more appropriate leveled group. As an enhancement shaman, there also aren't many upgrades that come out of the library outside of completing some quests and good experience, and unlocking the Scarlet Key so that you can get access to the other 2 wings. Now, after fighting through the long halls that are filled with countless books of Scarlet knowledge, we had come face to face with the villainous mage, Doan. But to our surprise, he wasn't the only villainous mage here today. You see, halfway through the dungeon, our mage revealed his true evil nature by starting to roll need on literally everything he could get his grimy little undead hands on. Now this left me feeling incredibly scared before heading into the final boss. And after fighting and taking down the mage, whose real only mechanic is making sure you're out of the room before he incinerates it, my fears came true. You see, he dropped both his shoulders and his staff. These are amazing upgrades for casters that they will use well into the latter 30s or even early 40s, and our warlock desperately needed them. So together, the stream chat and I clasped our virtual hands and we prayed for the warlock. All right, I really hope she wins that. I really hope Ivy wins. Yes, let's go. Okay. Woo! And by the gods, our prayers were answered. The warlock won not just one of the roles, but both, and walked away with the upgrades, leaving the evil mage empty-handed. Justice had actually been served, so I was able to log off with peace of mind for the night, knowing that a ninja looter was defeated. Logging back in on the next day, you guessed it, we started off with another Scarlet Monastery run. I mean, you really can't pass up the experience this dungeon has. Could you imagine my surprise though, when I saw a paladin was already the same level as us? I mean, I think this person literally had to have stayed up for 24 hours straight to get to this point. What a freaking gamer. Over the course of the next several hours, as a group, we crushed both the graveyard and the library quarters repeatedly. This is where I learned that having a pally tank is some of the easiest dungeon grinding you can ask for. I think they're literally just made for it. This brought us all the way up from level 32 to dang near halfway to 34. And along the way, the dungeon group finally brought us in enough gold to buy our first mount. We were now owners of a beautiful 2004 brown Kodo, basically brand new. The stable master even threw in an air freshener on the house. I had to go and test out the new 4-wheel drive and take this bad boy out for a rip in the Arathi Highlands. And while in the Highlands, it was time to hand out some chamois justice to anything and everything, from syndicates to alliance farmers, even the local wildlife. While killing one of the disgustingly overgrown spiders, something incredible actually happened for us. It dropped a nice BOE necklace that was worth a pretty respectable 10 gold on the auction house. And thankfully, right around this time, we actually got all of our add-ons updated and back as well. I gotta say, going from relying on your add-ons to back to the plain UI was definitely a learning curve. So to say I was happy to have them back was an understatement. Now, a couple hours later, and we were just finishing up the early quests in Arathi, and unfortunately, I was a bit under-leveled to try and attempt the second portion of the quest. This meant that it was time for us to set sail back to Kalimdor and take on the single most depressing zone in all of World of Warcraft, Desolace. Now, as a shaman, it wouldn't have been as bad as a questing zone thanks to the abilities water walking and underwater breathing. But that's only if you're smart enough to remember to bring the regents to cast them, which I was not. So after slogging through the swimming sections of all the quests like the normie classes, I ended up battling the Burning Blade clan, which, while I was there, I really had the thought that this entire zone kind of reminds me of just a gray, depressing version of Hellfire Ramparts, which did end up getting me excited for the eventual release of TBC. Now, after a few hours of Desolace questing, your boy needed a break. So where did we go? That's right on back to the Scarlet Monastery. I mean, this is starting to become a recurring theme at this point. This time, however, we headed into the Armory. As an enhancement shaman, this is the single most valuable section of the Scarlet Monastery for us. Herod, the final boss, drops amazing pieces of mail gear and his iconic Ravager two-hand axe. I mean, if you're one of those two-hand enhanced kind of people. Now, on our first run, as we made our way through the dungeon and defeated Herod, he actually dropped his helmet. However, the tank did need it. So with us being level 37 and not being able to use it to 40, I decided to let him have it. However, we were blessed because on the second run, the helm dropped again, and this time it was ours. And just as we were about to say our goodbyes and about to leave, the legendary tabard of the Scarlet Crusade dropped. This tabard is single-handedly responsible for so many happy and angry people, and normally I'm on the latter. So after asking the chat for their prayers for a good roll, we actually we lost it. Now back in Desolace, we finished up some remaining quests like killing centaurs and exorcising imprisoned demons, which I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is our first run-in with demons up until this point. And after once again having my fill of Desolace, it was time to, you guessed it, head into Razorfen Downs. Probably thought I was going to say the Scarlet Monastery again, didn't you? Now, I always found Razorfen Downs to be one of the creepiest dungeons in all of Classic WoW. This time we grouped up with another paladin tank, and we delivered justice to all the corrupted piggies who seek to take over Azeroth. And we finally came face to face with the scariest race in all of Warcraft, the terrifying Nerubians. This is also the dungeon where I learned as a chamois to always remember to recall your totems, because I may or may not have been responsible for wiping the group. And as our warlock tried to run the entire way out of the dungeon being chased by mobs, it made him so angry that he decided to rage quit, leaving us with only 4 people left to finish the dungeon. At this point, we had already completed 80% of the dungeon, and there was absolutely no way we were going to be able to replace someone. We attempted the impossible, trying to pull it off, handicapped. And against all odds, we actually did it. Slowly but surely, we took down the pack that wiped us before and took care of the disgusting abomination known as Glutton, who dropped his amazing cleaver, which was going to be a big one-hand upgrade for us. Unfortunately for us, the tank also needed it. This time, however, I was rolling on that bad boy, and wouldn't you guessed it, we actually won it. Now at this point, I haven't really used axes at all on my character, so my axe skill is extremely low. So I tried to sneak in using the weapon and gain my weapon skill, and I hoped nobody would notice. Although it was only moments later that the tank rightfully called us out.
Would be cool if you didn't level your 1H axe skill in the dungeon. We're already down 1 person in.
But honestly, I think he was just jealous that we won the axe. And eventually, after fighting tooth and nail up the rest of the dungeon, we were face to face with our first run-in with a real lich. And I'm not gonna lie, I remember this boss being a bit of a challenge when we did it on our warrior. However, with a paladin tank, he really wasn't any problem at all. I think it's with this dungeon being filled with all this undead, it really feels like it was easy mode for the paladin. And with that, the lich was defeated and the dungeon was completed. Now, with RFD behind us, I was requested by somebody in the chat to head to the Badlands for nostalgia's sake. And me, being the ever so giving gentleman that I am, decided to oblige. Alright, fine. Yes, maybe he did or did not throw a donation your boy's way, but that is besides the point, guys. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Deadmans, you're only level 36. You have no business being in the Badlands just yet. And to that I say, you're right. But adventure calls, my friends. So together, myself and Cody headed out to the Badlands, starting in the evil jungles of Stranglethorn. Get it? Cody? Kodo? Alright. Through thick and thin, we made it through the jungles, and eventually through the misty fields of Duskwood, and we even trekked through the Alliance-covered zone of Redridge, until we stood in front of the gates to the Burning Steppes. Now this is where the danger's really gonna set in, guys. You see, as a level 36, traversing through a zone filled to the brim with level 55s was just asking for a terrible time. I mean, if we were to get dismounted even once, I'm convinced we would have a massive repair bill and a corpse walk by the time we respawned. Although, with some quick maneuvering and plenty of luck, I'll admit, we traversed through this fiery hellhole. Guys, I actually even remembered to grab the flight pass along the way for in the future. That's big for me. I would never normally do that. We had eventually done it. We had reached the mountain pass, which on the other side lays our destination, the Badlands. And almost immediately upon entering the Badlands and starting some of the quest, I found out, yeah, you guys were definitely right. I had no business being here. But hey, at least we do have the flight pass now for ahead of time. So that meant it was time for us to return to Desolace for the final time and finish off the remaining quest chains that lay ahead of us, like closing these godforsaken demon portals who spawn these fell guards who do a ridiculous amount of damage. Who's the idiot that said they wanted to face more demons? After finally completing the demon portals in Desolace, we were now almost level 37, and I was extremely happy to say goodbye to this depressing zone forever. Now, moving on to the Eastern Kingdoms, we returned to Terran Mill to finish a quest that saw us defeating the vicious Yeti Frostmaw, which I gotta say, this quest had me feeling a certain way. So we sneak into his house, we kill his family, we lay a trap for him to get him to come back home, and then we murder him. I don't feel like we're really the good guys here. After feeling puzzled as to what I had just done, I did end up dealing some pleasurable justice to the Syndicate crime family once again, which actually saw us getting extremely lucky on some good timing and grouping up with a pally who just happened to be here so that we could finish the finale of the quest chain, which saw us taking down a crime lord and his goons that we surely would never have been able to do solo. This meant we now had Terran Mill's quest completed, and it was time to finish off some stragglers in the Arathi Highlands that we had left before. This is also where I witnessed some form of black magic firsthand, as I was busy killing some Alliance farmers, which honestly has become a real favorite pastime of mine at this point. This happened. Where'd he go? Where did he go? After turning in the Arathi completed quest chains and heading back to Thunderbluff for the night, we were now level 38. And with that, it was time for us to return to the Badlands. And I have to say, I really do love questing in the Badlands. With no crazy terrain to have to slow you down and a bunch of animals to slay for endless skins, it really is a dream matchup for us. What's that? Who's that ugly mug over there in the corner? Guys, that's me. I just wanted to say that we will now be streaming and have been streaming for a bit at this point every Monday through Friday from 6 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure to come drop in the chat and say hi so you can see all of Beefman's adventures live. Now, as we were minding our own business, slaying entire generations of wildlife for their hides, I was promptly invited to a dungeon. This was going to be our first run of Alderman, a dungeon that I do love, but I can never seem to remember where I'm going when I'm there. So as long as I'm in a group with somebody who knows where they're going, we're golden. And thankfully, that was the case this time. Now you see, this dungeon is filled to the brim with some of the best mid-game gear, and it is loaded with a bunch of different bosses that each have an opportunity to drop you a nice upgrade. But it also has one of the more challenging in-dungeon bosses that you will have faced up until this point. And thankfully, our group actually made quite short work of this dungeon. Although I wasn't able to snag any real upgrades or complete any quests, I did end up leaving with still half a level of experience gained in a little over an hour. The Rock Pounder. So with Alderman finally completed, it was time to finish a journey that we started almost 9 levels ago. Time to finally complete the last wing of the Scarlet Monastery, this time the Cathedral. Now as an enhanced Shami, and more specifically one that is literally hours away from getting dual wield, there really isn't any good loot in the Cathedral or good reason for us to complete it outside of a very hefty XP reward from finishing the quest. Our hands were tied, we had to finish it out. So we returned to the Scarlet Halls for the last time, and as we made our way through the droves of the crazed zealots, we were eventually face to face with their Scarlet commanders, Hide Lord Mograine and his side piece, High Inquisitor Whitemane. These two do put up a rather interesting boss fight, with Mograine's infamous invincible bubble and Whitemane resurrecting him mid-fight as she enters the fray, essentially starting the fight over. However, their twisted holy magics were obviously no might for us. And although it is a healer mace, we did end up snagging the Hand of Righteousness to use for the upcoming dual wield life. This meant that our journey through the monastery was over once and for all. And with the quest completed, we were now halfway through level 39. We were almost there, but with limited available options on our hands, we were forced to return to the jungles. This meant that it is time to go to quite possibly my least favorite zone in all of Classic WoW. You see, my friends, these jungles, they change you. They just change people. They turn once intelligent folk into belligerent, demonic little monsters, ourselves included. Immediately upon entering the shores of Stranglethorn, we were welcomed with the traditional Stranglethorn welcome. Don't do it. I'm taking a sip. Don't do it. Oh my, he knew it. You fucker. After reviving and making our way up to the Horde encampment, we were beginning our journey of decimating the local troll populations when we noticed a Draenei watching from the sidelines. And I'll be honest, it had only been 6 minutes to this point, but the jungles, they had already gotten to me. What happened next was like an out-of-body experience. I just remember being blinded by hate and rage. And after I committed a horrible act and came to, little did I know, karma was coming swift and it was coming hard for my butt. Moments after killing the shaman, he returned, but not on his shaman. You see, he also had a 60 warlock that was parked right off in the distance. This led to him beginning to camp my body over and over for the course of the next half hour, until I eventually outsmarted the little monster and revived just out of his line of sight. And without hesitation, I made my break for it. It was time to head to the Horde village. Now once there, I was confident that I had finished just enough quests to hit level 40, but I was wrong. I was actually 700 experience shy. Are you kidding me? 99% of the way there, 700 XP. So this meant it was time to head just outside of the village and go kill some ogres to finally hit our goal of the episode. And 3 ogres later, it happened. The moment we've been working so hard to achieve, we had finally reached level 40. The glorious ability of being able to dual wield was ours. And what happened almost immediately after hitting 40? You would think a bunch of fireworks, maybe a huge celebration. No, in Stranglethorn fashion, I was immediately killed by an alley cat when I had extremely low HP. But that wasn't gonna stop us, and it wasn't even gonna bother us. Because, my friends, we had finally achieved everything that we set out to accomplish in today's episode. This meant with our mount achieved and level 40 reached, our journey into Azeroth is going to take on a completely new perspective. We're basically halfway to level 60 in total experience. With that said, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's been along for the ride and made it this far. Also want to reiterate to make sure to drop by the stream and say hi. I've been streaming here on YouTube and Twitch every Monday through Friday like I mentioned before, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. Plus, we're planning on the occasional Saturdays. Also, make sure to drop by the Discord and come hang out with the rest of us heathens. As always, don't forget to subscribe for more shenanigans. This is Deadmans, and I'll see you in the next video.
Growing up in Mulgore, they used to tell the children in the village that the grass always appears greener on the other side of the fence. And I never really understood what they meant until now. You see, recently I've been having these weird visions. I don't know what they mean, but they're becoming increasingly more vivid with each passing day. Regardless of what these visions may mean, we must continue forward and finish our goal of reaching level 60 before the portal opens and lays waste to Azeroth. In today's episode, we set out with 3 major goals in mind. Goal number 1, reaching level 50. Goal number 2, start gathering any and all of our pre-raid bits along the way that we can find. Goal number 3, trying to start as many large-scale PvP battles that we can. So today's adventure picks up back in Orgrimmar. Returning to your class trainer in Classic WoW is such a love-hate relationship. On one hand, it feels amazing getting new rank ups and learning some new skills, but on the other hand, you know you're going to be leaving there with a lot less gold in the pockets when you're done.
Hey there.
So, after becoming quite a bit stronger at the cost of our life savings, it was time to head back into the hellhole that is otherwise known as Stranglethorn Vale. Deadman's fun fact: it is quite possibly my least favorite zone in all of World of Warcraft. Once we were back in the jungles, we began the honest work of decimating the entire region's local wildlife, stealing all of its rare religious artifacts, and removing of its indigenous populations. But all of these atrocities are excused because of how frickin' cool we look with dual wield, am I right? Eventually, we were sent to dispatch 2 high-ranking troll officers who were hiding far behind enemy lines. A task that turned out to be quite a bit more difficult than I had expected. You see, trolls are not to be underestimated, because right when you think you've got them on the brink of defeat, they have this nasty little enrage mechanic that absolutely can shred you to pieces if you're not careful. And, well, that's exactly what happened to me. After reviving and heading back for round 2, it was time for us to put our mighty Tauren brain to use. And I figured if I was crafty enough to pull them off to the side and reduce the numbers game, things might swing in our favor. And honestly, it worked. Now, thanks in part to my Wind Fury procs, which are the ultimate gamble, because when it hits, oh, does it feel good. But when it doesn't, yeah, we just don't talk about that here. So with the trolls now defeated and us essentially finished with the Northern Jungle quests, it was time to enter a zone that single-handedly got the most love from the pre-patch. I am of course talking about the Marshes of Dustwallow. Now, in the northern regions of the marsh, specifically at Breckenwall Village, I quickly filled up my quest log, gathering every quest that was available. These quests included killing nearby Theramore infiltrators trying to infiltrate, I guess, rescuing a captured Blood Elf princess from a castle, and once again, killing a crap load of giant spiders. And I still find them incredibly creepy to this day. I think it has something to do with their sound effects. While wearing headphones, it really just gets in and creeps you out. Until eventually, we quite literally flew into level 41. I can only imagine how this would have looked from the Murloc's perspective. While minding my own business trying to exterminate an entire island full of these insidious creatures, this mage strolled up out of nowhere with some of the biggest main character energy I've ever seen since I accidentally loaded up the front page of Twitch. Wait a minute, did someone say Twitch? Time for a shameless plug. I stream every Wednesday to Saturday from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on both Twitch and YouTube. So if you've enjoyed the content or you just want to tell me I suck, come drop on by and say hi. Back to Beefman's journey. Now, after the mage had gathered up all the remaining Murlocs that I needed for the quest kills, he died, which resulted in all of the Murlocs running back over to me with a hateful vengeance and a taste for blood. After showing off my survival prowess and finishing the Murlocs, we then set free some trapped spirits and participated in what I really do feel like is one of the best escort quests in all of classic World of Warcraft. And once finished with that, we of course had to go kill more giant spiders. With these quests now finished and turned in, it was time to momentarily say goodbye to the northern section of the marshes and head south, this time on the hunt for the witch Tabitha, whom I half expected to try and put us into her oven and turn us into some meatloaf. I mean, she is a witch and all. Thankfully, she was more concerned with her missing jewelry and taking revenge on some other Tauren than to worry about us. However, that is more than I can say for this priest here, who decided it was a good use of their time to murder and camp me over and over again. And I also found out the hard way that shamans aren't the only special ones who can apparently walk on water.
Oh, I got an idea. Oh, this.
Big brain. Big brain.
Okay. Hear me out. Water walking. Wait.
Prepare for trouble.
Wait a minute. What? Damn it. Slaps me across the face. Oh, man.
After being forced to get res sickness from the priest, I then had to play hide and seek from an evil gnome warrior. And who would have thought Tauren aren't very good at playing hide and seek?
Okay. Oh, didn't expect him to be that fast. Do you think he sees us? There's no way he sees us, right? Think he sees us? No way. Do you think he saw us? No way. No way.
After all these fun shenanigans, it was time for us to visit the goblin town of Mudsprocket, which was a completely new town added into Dustwallow and filled with completely new quests. This saw us facing the most terrifying creature that we've gone up against until now, the legendary, huge, mighty black dragons. What? I know it was a baby, it still counts though, it still counts. With the dragonkin defeated, it was finally time for us to head back north and reach level 42, and log off for the night. Now, it was a new day in Azeroth, and what better way to start off the day than beating up some other fellow Tauren.
These enhanced crits just feel so good.
Yeah, they do, Deadmans. After admittedly being somewhat of a heathen and killing this Draenei shaman, I then finished off some bloodfin raptors for their feathers. And upon a closer inspection of the raptors, I actually realized it looks like they tied the feathers on in an armband, but I had always thought that the raptors naturally just grew feathers out of there, which honestly just filled me with more questions than answers. So, after making the trek back, wondering about these new feathers, I was finally back at the village. After handing in the remaining quests of Dustwallow, we actually hit level 43 as well. This meant that of the entire zone, we only had one quest remaining, becoming an ogre warchief. But to do it, one warchief was going to need to be defeated. Because you see, in ogre culture, in order to become the warchief of the clan, you must be the strongest, not the smartest or most cunning. You just had to possess the most strength. So in order to prove that, we had to win a duel. Now, admittedly, this was going to be no easy task, because this warchief was an elite mob. But I had an idea, one so stupid, it just might work. You see, as a chamois, with the help of Earthbind Totem, Searing Totem, and Ghost Wolf, we can theoretically kite this bruiser until he runs off crying to his mommy. The problem? Well, if he stuns me even once, we're probably going to die.
Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. All right, we need to pull him around, pull him around. Come on, Earthbind. Okay. Do this, do that. Get a heal off. All right, we're good, we're good, we're good. We're owning him, we're owning him.
A paladin who had been watching this go down for over 5 minutes now at this point must have finally decided enough is enough, and decided to help us finally slay the ogre warchief. With his defeat, Dustwallow Marsh had been completed, with the marsh now in our rear view, and the desert of Tanaris just a tad bit out of our reach. What a perfect time for a little Maraudin action, because deep within these caverns lies our first piece of treasure, the legendary Blackstone Ring. We clacked our hooves together 3 times, and we were promptly teleported to the godforsaken lands of Desolace once again. Because with the TBC pre-patch, the summoning stones outside of dungeons and raids actually work. Now, although we were in Desolace once again, going to Maraudin is kinda like driving through Ohio. You just have to make it through the shittiness of Ohio to get through to all the other good states around it. Once in the iconic dungeon, we were face to face with the poisonous elemental Noxion, who I honestly thought could only drop his trinket. I mean, I swear that's all I've ever seen drop up until this point. But this time, he dropped his little shooter, and the casters gobbled that thing right up. Next up was the boss, Razorlash, which is a nasty vine whipping elemental who just so happened to drop a set of shoulders that would carry us well into the 50s. And guess what? They actually dropped. Now, before we go any further, this is where Beefmans learned an important lesson in World of Warcraft, that if given a chance to f you, it probably will. You see, I never knew that if 2 people roll the same thing, a random roll is assigned off screen and the item is awarded to that player. But we learned today. Next up was the satyr boss, Vile Tongue, whose entire fight felt like a big game of tag, you're it. Eventually, we put the goat boy down and we were rewarded for our efforts with this beautiful new dagger.
Whew, we got it.
After making our way through the rest of the dungeon, we were now at what the player base likes to call the princess section of Maraudin, due to being home to Azeroth's most desirable bachelorette, Princess Theradras. Not only is she incredibly sexy, she also drops our first pre-bis item, the Blackstone ring that I mentioned earlier. Now, after quickly finishing off the Golem landslide, whose only attack is cleverly named, we were face to face with the most gorgeous thing ever created in World of Warcraft. And to think that this 2-bit hunter who stole our shoulders had the audacity to comment on her beauty. I mean, let's be frickin' honest. This boy wasn't winning any blue medals at the local fair himself. But back to the matters at hand. You see, an adventurer sometimes must do things that they disapprove of in order to progress. So we did it, my friends. We proceeded to murder the innocent princess in cold blood. And to make things even worse, our horrible act was in vain because she didn't even drop the ring we were after. It wasn't completely a loss though. We did get a nice healing dagger for our off-spec in the chance we ever needed to roll resto. And after killing the princess, there are technically 2 more additional bosses that you can kill. Rockgrip, the giant crocodile, and a goblin who is hidden away in a corridor. This run, we opted out of the goblin, deciding instead to only do the crocodile boss, who has a chance at dropping an amazing new set of boots. And upon killing the overgrown gator, they dropped. And I figured, with the hunter already winning the shoulders, what are the chances that the loot gods are actually going to smile down upon him again? And well, they told me to go f myself. And as he sat there celebrating, I contemplated how many years I'd get in an Azerothian prison cell if I were to accidentally drown him right there. But I figured it best if I just hearth and leave these tragic moments behind us. Now, level 44, it was time for us to move on to the next zone, the Forests of Feralis. I will tell you, friends, that I am extremely glad that my favorite color is green, because that is all we were going to see for the next day. After arriving at the forests and gathering all the quests I could at the Horde camp of Mohache, we were promptly sent out to take care of some encroaching bands of troublesome gnolls, gather some ogre kobold, which ended up giving me extreme nostalgia for Wrath of the Lich King. What do you guys think? Are TBC Anniversary Realms going to continue into the Wrath of the Lich King? Or are they not? Let me know down in the comments what you think. Unfortunately, we also had to kill some of the cutest creatures in all of World of Warcraft. Not cuter than you though, sweetheart. Shh. After greening out a little too hard, it was time to enter many players' favorite dungeon in classic WoW, the Troll Runes of Zul'Farrak. And as we were making our way, delivering punishment on the Sand Fury tribe, I had to reiterate something near and dear to my heart.
Now, hopefully, if we get any loot drops, we don't lose it to a hunter again like yesterday. That's pretty sad.
And moments later,
Sure, 6 rank. Oh yeah, that's a need. That's gonna be a need for me, big dog. Can we get some hope in the chat? That's 3. We're 4 needs. You might as well just roll need on it. The 5th guy might as well just do it too, just for fun. Of course, it went to the hunter.
if only it was just the hunters that I had to worry about. After arriving and delivering sweet justice to the troll warlord Antonsul, he dropped an absolutely beautiful one-handed mace. Something that literally screamed, I'm made for shamans and shamans alone. I mean, it's right there in the tooltip. It says it. And I'm not gonna lie, it would have been an absolute banger of a bonk stick for us. That was until this evil paladin decided to crush the hopes and dreams of this poor Tauren like a demonic child when they see a ladybug.
That is like a quintessential enhance.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys, our life has been filled with nothing but pain as of recently. Sometimes I sat and wondered if I'll even have the strength to make it to level 60 at this point. But out of the dreary storm-filled clouds, a light started to shine through. The light of hitting level 45. This was supposedly going to be our halfway point in experience to level 60. And I chose to be optimistic and view the second half as an opportunity to enjoy life and be filled with positivity instead. That was until literally 5 minutes later and this stupid hunter stole a healer chest that literally had absolutely no stats for him. Okay, we're calming. We're calming, everything's fine. We now only had 2 bosses remaining, the war chiefs of the Sand Fury themselves. And if I'm being honest, for having 2 bosses at the same time, we actually put these guys down incredibly fast. But then it dropped. A beautiful axe named Ripsaw that caught me completely off guard. Now, I'm not gonna lie. At this point, with my luck, I wouldn't even be surprised if the hunter's gorilla pet won the roll against me. But by the loot gods, we were blessed with an axe that was likely going to carry us into the high 50s. So this cursed run of Zul'Farrak had been cleansed, and our spirit was free to return to Feralis. Now, back in the forests, we put down some beefy punishment on the Grim Totem tribe once again. I also put down some angry ogres who were massively underpopulated for these quest requirements. And we had one of our first run-ins with the disgusting Silithid bugs. After finishing these quests and back at Mohache, we were gifted with level 46. This meant that the endless sands of Tanaris finally awaited us. After flying in and arriving at the goblin town of Gadgetzan, we did something to fix all the hate that I've been receiving in the YouTube comments for literally weeks at this point. It was time for us to increase our bag space once again. So, with a huge loss of over 10% of our entire wealth, we picked up 3 more knapsacks and began gathering up all the quests in the town. Now it was time to turn these highways of once golden sands into a blood-drenched sea of pain. As I said earlier, one of our goals is to try and incite as many large-scale PvP battles in World of Warcraft as we can in preparation for what's to come for us in TBC. So the hunt began for our first victim. Poor, lonely night elf hunter that was just trying to get his questing done. But we had other ideas in store for him. You see, after showing him the true might of the Horde, it was only moments later when karma came knocking and the hunter came back with revenge. The rage that I saw in his eyes was burning like 1,000 red-hot suns. Now, friends, I admit, I am no rogue, but I gotta say, I definitely felt like one when I pulled this off.
Oh! Oh!
After this triumphant victory, it was time for us to continue questing until we saw something wild that I've never seen before. I believe they're called a multi-boxer with 4 different accounts. And immediately a chamois appeared with the same exact thoughts in mind. Let's put this monster down. With the leader or the main account being a level 51 pally, it was definitely risky going in head to head, but I was willing to die if it meant putting this evil to bed. And ultimately, that did come to fruition. However, with some additional backup of a mage, we were able to kill all of his accounts and hopefully slow down his progression, if even just a bit. Now, still grouped with the chamois, we moved into the coastline to take down some pirates who were supposedly causing a ruckus. As I was making my way through the cave, I could smell something rancid and putrid. As I turned around, I saw it. And I'm not gonna lie, I still have nightmares about it to this day. Thankfully, we put this gnome down and we made the world just that much better of a place, even if momentarily. Now you see, friends, if you haven't learned this by now, when you kill a rogue, you should know that you have just started a back and forth war that will go on for eternity. Something shatters in them. What little shred, and I mean little shred, of sanity they had left is now gone. And what this devolved into was all out warfare.
This is it. This is my time to shine. Burst! No! That Earthshock was so close! No!
And me? Let's just say at this point, I was along for the ride. So, over the course of the next several minutes, Sleepy, myself, and eventually some more Hordes decided to start a crusade of killing the rogue, a mage, and any other alliance we could find, until eventually we had laid claim to these lands for the Horde. And with our PvP mission complete for the night, it was time for Beefmans to take a well-deserved rest. Now, back on for another beautiful day in Azeroth, it was time to finish eradicating the droves of pirates sullying this once beautiful coastline. After invading both their ships and their storage houses, we had finally put an end to the swashbuckler's reign. Now, leaving the coastline, we returned to Gadgetzan and turned in all the completed quests. which allowed us to hit level 47. The end goal of 50 for the episode was very much in sight. And to celebrate this momentous occasion, we decided to head into Myrddin once again in order to search for that ring. I'm not gonna lie, at the sight of another hunter, my butthole started to pucker. And of course, this time around, the shoulders from Razorlash, the elemental, never appeared. And actually, all throughout this entire run of Myrddin, no upgrades were to be found. That was until we were face to face with my lovely princess once again. And as usual, we were forced to do the unspeakable and put her down. But then, friends, it happened. And only 2 runs of Myrddin, the Blackstone ring dropped. And I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been this nervous for a drop in a long time. And something changed. All of the wrongs that we've seen today and up until this point were made right. With one roll of the dice, our future completely changed.
Here it is. What? We don't. Woo! We got it!
We won. I was so happy that I didn't even really get that mad when I lost a huge boot upgrade just after this to the Pally tank on a pair of leather boots. Not even when faced with the fact that we lost again to a double roll on a roll of 67. With this huge win, we decided to leave on a high note and log off from Azeroth for the night, returning now on another new day. Still enjoying looking at our ring in our inventory, I decided to go to the southern reaches of Tanaris and hope to complete one of the zone's very long escort quests. However, this is where I learned a very valuable lesson. You see, just because we all have our differences, we may not talk the same, we may not sound the same, and we may look differently. At the end of the day, we're all still Azerothians. So everyone, meet Maldara. To this day, the only nice gnome that I've ever run across. Now, due to the language barrier, I couldn't really tell if it was out of a want to protect me or the chicken, but I sleep a lot better at night, believing it's me that she wanted to keep safe. And before I even knew it, the chicken was returned. I didn't even get to say my real goodbyes, and thanks to this gnome. Before they disappeared off into the wastelands like Batman, never to be seen again. So, Maldara, the gnome warlock on Night Slayer, if you're out there and you could hear me, thank you for not showing only me, but everybody else, that maybe, just maybe, not all the Alliance are bad. After handing in the chicken escort, we were enjoying our favorite pastime of taking out ogres, when a random message appeared asking us to DPS a Blackrock Depths run. After pondering and asking the stream chat what they thought, we decided, for the gear's sake, why not? So, it was time to enter Azeroth's most iconic in-game dungeon. We left behind the sands for the obsidian. Now, anyone who has ever ran through BRD realizes that this dungeon, although extremely iconic, well, it's long. It's long as hell. So to you, I say, enjoy the next 3 hours because you're getting the unedited full run, and I'll check back in with you guys in a few. All right, I'm just kidding, but I will not lie to you friends about something. Every time I return here, I get these feelings and these visions of the past that start to bubble up inside of me, of the nightmares that I once experienced on my warrior. It was a new character and it was a new me. So I put those feelings behind and stayed with my group as we traversed through these hollowed halls, taking down pack after pack and boss after boss, even managing to snag quite a few upgrades along the way, some that were going to stick with us all the way to level 60, until eventually we had returned to the Ring of Law, or as I call it, the Ring of Pain, the home of the fabled Savage Gladiator chain that escaped our grasp earlier. And if I'm being upfront and I'm being honest with you guys, I was actually relieved to see we didn't spawn Gorosh the Dervish, the boss that drops the chain. I don't know if my heart could withstand another loss like that. Instead, we spawned the Worgen boss, Eviscerator, who instead actually dropped us an amazing set of shoulders to look forward to for when we reach level 55. Continuing deeper into the mountain, destroying dwarves and elementals alike, we eventually came face to face with the leader of the dwarves themselves, Emperor Dagran Thracian in the flesh. the wielder of the legendary hammer, Iron Foe, a weapon that I would legitimately consider doing wildly inappropriate things for. But alas, my friends, it was not in the cards for us today. However, he did instead drop 2 absolutely banger pieces of gear upgrades for us instead. A set of bracers and a nice new shaman belt. I will die on the hill that this is way more of a shaman belt than a hunter.
Ninja? What I ninja? The belt? That's a chamois belt.
Because as you see here, I decided to roll on the belt as well, which seemed to supposedly upset the hunter.
So much for friendly. What?
And as I sat and I pondered whether or not I really was the monster that the hunter claimed me to be, it was time for us to stop sulking and move forward into quite possibly my favorite zone in the entirety of classic World of Warcraft, the hinterland. You see, as a horde, this zone is not only aesthetically astounding, it is also home to an amazing amount of quests and rewards that will carry you far into the 50s and some even into the endgame. But more importantly than that, it is also the location of an area that is, at its core, probably the best thing about classic World of Warcraft, at least in my opinion. The legendary troll runes of Jin Talor. You see, it is completely filled with elite troll mobs that absolutely require you to have a group to complete the many quests located within the runes. I mean, there is nothing in any other zone that feels so alive as basically being a live action dungeon when you can come across other adventurers and other groups. I mean, if there is anything that I would really love to see Blizzard add into Classic Plus, it is this. We need more of this. For right now, we focused our attention on the earlier phase quests, such as slaying boom chickens and trying to take down elite spiders that I had no business trying to attack. Until eventually, with the help of turning in some straggler quests that were scattered all around Azeroth, we had done it. We had reached level 49. This meant that we were on the last remaining level of the episode, and after trekking through the dangerous Furbold tunnels of Felwood and handing in the Seat of Life quest in Moonglade, we set out for the troll ruins of Zul'Farrak one last time, this time in search of the most famous vegetable in all of Azeroth, the legendary trinket, Carrot on a Stick, which has an incredible bonus of 3% increased mount speed. In order to complete this quest and receive the trinket, one player must possess the Mallet of Zul'Farrak, which is gathered and completed back in the hinterlands at the troll area that I had mentioned earlier. And thankfully for us, the undead mage Wrinklebag actually had it. So we made our way through the runes once again, taking out the endless armies of trolls until we had eventually cleared the dungeon. But there was one big problem. When we went to hit the gong and kill the giant Hydra who was in possession of the item we needed, only 3 of us decided to stay and do the quest. So with all of our might, we rallied together against this giant serpent. And I'm not going to lie to you, this was tough. You see, we had no healer and the paladin wasn't even a tank. And to make matters worse, this Hydra was no pushover. He is likely the toughest boss of all the bosses in this entire dungeon. As the fight went on, things were back and forth between us and the mighty beast, until eventually it looked like things were finally going our way. That was until the beast must have known his end was coming, and in one last-ditch effort, he threw our hero Beefmans into the air to take him out with him. But thankfully, the might of our hooves saved us from a fate that surely would have killed any blood elves with their dainty little calves. So we said our goodbye, and thanks to the mage Wrinkles for having the mallet and the pally for sticking around. And with this, my friends, we had completed the last straggler quest of Zul'Farrak. We were rewarded with a nice ring upgrade, and more importantly, the most sought after veggie in all the land. And of course, to top it off, the incredible level of 50. So let's do a quick recap. We started today's adventure with 3 huge goals in mind. Reach level 50 and get ready for the final push into endgame, where the portal opens and changes everything. 2, start the long grind of gathering any Prebis items that we can along the way, as the hunt for Prebis is some of the most fun you can honestly have in Classic. And 3, involve ourselves and create more PvP interactions to get ourselves ready for the all-out warfare that will be had in the Burning Crusade. And with all 3 of those things completed, our journey and everything that we set out to do has come to a successful end. So as always, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching, especially everyone who has made it this far. And again, I want to remind you to keep up to date with Beefmans and our journey throughout Azeroth and the Outlands by dropping by the stream and saying hi. So be on the lookout because we'd love to have you. We also started a community guild on Nightslayer Horde and would absolutely love to have any and all Hordes regardless of class, level, or experience. So with all that shameless plugging out of the way, as always, this is Deadmans, and I'll see you in the next video. "7 days. 7 days is all I have until the Dark Portal finally opens. Welcome everybody to Beefman's final journey to the Dark Portal. Today's adventure begins in a dark, isolated temple that's been sunken away from the current Azerothian world. Deep within this temple, there are endless droves of trolls that are praying to an ancient evil. It is now Beefman's mission to cleanse this temple with the help of a group of brave adventurers and put an end to these religious zealots once and for all. Slowly, as we made our way through these confusing halls that were filled with various traps and puzzles, we stumbled upon a giant hulking monstrosity. This monstrosity was named Atal Alarian, who willingly underwent horrific body-altering rituals in order to appease his god's undying hunger. And although he may have tried with all his perverse might, his blood god's twisted power-up was not nearly enough to save him. With his defeat, we pushed even deeper inside the temple, eventually stumbling upon the lower levels of the sanctum. This is where we would finally come face to face with our first run-in with fully grown green dragons. Unfortunately, these once noble protectors of Azeroth had now been corrupted and saw themselves turned against their once sworn duties. It was now our duty to put their spirits to rest. After a brutal back and forth battle, we had finally finished what needed to be done. With heavy hearts, we continued onward, further into this vile place of worship, eventually coming face to face with the sleeping giant Aranicus. This is the first dungeon boss to really inspire the feeling of fear in so many adventurers' hearts. It was time to put this once great dragon out of his eternal misery and send him to the resting place that he truly belonged. Now this was no easy task, friends. You see, this dragon was no ordinary dragon. Aranicus was actually one of Ysera's most trusted friends with benefits. And this former bang buddy wasn't going to go down easy. You see, not only is he incredibly large and powerful, he's also equipped with a sleeping mechanic. And if you are unlucky enough for it to be cast upon your healer, then your group might just be cursed to a first-class ticket to the Ghost Realm. Thankfully, that fate was not meant for us today. And with sadness once again in our hearts, we had to put this dragon boy toy down. But this did mean that the temples and the filth residing in them had now been cleansed, allowing us to make our triumphant return to the hinterlands, which is honestly one of my personal favorite zones in all of Classic WoW. But upon my arrival, I was made aware of news that really broke my little Tauren heart. You see, the troll ruins of Jin Talor that I spoke about so highly in our previous episode are not what they once were. It was then made aware to me that with the TBC pre-patch, areas and enemies that were once elites and required groups are now no different than your run-of-the-mill regular questing zones. And honestly, this one really hurt. This was the first change that came from the pre-patch that I actually found to be a real downgrade to the leveling experience and the experience as a whole to Classic WoW. You see, I truly found these incredibly engaging pieces of content that basically played out like massive open world dungeons to be something so perfect about this game. Something that I truly absolutely loved. Thanks a lot, Blizzard. Way to go. If your mission was to hurt me, well, then you succeeded. So with everything interesting about Jin Talor now ripped away outside of its architecture, let's fast forward to Raventusk Village, where our hero Beefmans now sat with the most desirable thing in all of Classic WoW leveling, a quest log filled to the absolute brim with green completed quests. The sweet, sweet dopamine. In the process of completing these, our hero saw an entire level of experience being turned in within a matter of minutes, leaving us from level 51 to 52. Now, I owe it to everyone watching at this point to preface this next section of the video by saying viewer discretion is absolutely advised, folks, because you are about to witness something that has never been experienced by any other person on the face of Azeroth. But before we go any further, for you to understand all of this, we're going to have to go back in time, back 1 year ago to March of 2025, when we were making our final push to level 60 on our warrior for the first time. Back then, you see, we were just a lowly orc, just trying to carve our way into becoming Azeroth's sexiest warrior. And we saw ourselves in a group working our way through Blackrock, in the infamous Ring of Law, or as I name it now, the Ring of Pain. It was there that we suffered a pain I wouldn't wish on even an enemy gnome. What we suffered was every classic warrior's worst nightmare, losing the Savage Gladiator chain. And friends, I will say, the old wives' tale about time healing all wounds, it does have some merit, because although it was incredibly painful, I had actually started to forget, and things were starting to get better. That was until, well, this happened. Alright, Dervish, is it gonna be you? Oh, it's Gorosh. We're half of the way there. Could you imagine? Is this it? Here we go. Holy it dropped! Did we just get SGC on the enhanced Shami? What? No! We've lost SGC twice now. And we have to watch him dance too. Oh no, my heart. So friends, I'm sure you can understand. I've decided to quit playing WoW for my mental health. I mean, even Blizzard themselves reached out to me personally. And they told me that I have absolutely the worst luck in this game. And at this point, it's just downright sad to watch me continue. So everyone, it's been an absolute wild ride so far with you all, and I hope you remember to like, comment, and subscribe, because this train isn't slowing down, we're just jumping onto different tracks. So everyone, welcome to the channel's new main game, Hello Kitty Island Adventure. Alright, I'm just kidding. However, watching this hunter dance and celebrate with the SGC sitting upon his chest really did tear something deep within my soul. But, being the professionals we are, we moved forward into the dungeon. I'm angry. Continuing to lose upgrade after upgrade to the hunter and rogue until eventually Blackrock Depths was finished. And honestly, I had to log off for the night to avoid a rather serious crash out. I mean, understandably so, am I right? Now, let's fast forward, and it is now a new day in Azeroth. Deciding to try and put those horrible pains of yesterday behind us, I decided to head to quite possibly the best zone in all of Classic WoW. Of course, I'm talking about the Jurassic Park themed zone of Ungoro Crater. I don't know if it's the fact that the zone just plays out extremely well as you go around questing, or the fact that growing up as a wee young puppy pup, I always loved dinosaurs. And this zone does not disappoint when it comes to dinosaurs. Walking through here, you really feel the inspiration of all those 90s Jurassic Park movies. This zone is also amazing because it's essentially filled to the absolute brim with kill quests, which, as you guys know, are my absolute favorite kind of WoW quest. You literally just wander around the zone, playing Ring Around the Posy, killing a pterodactyl here and a raptor there, and collecting some strange glowing gems along the way, and completing a rather interesting escort quest that involves helping a goblin who seems to be struggling with some sort of medical condition. This goes on and on until eventually the goblin is brought back safely to his little sweetheart at the camp. Now, after terrorizing the Land of the Lost and all its reptilian residents, I had actually managed to complete all the quests that this zone had to offer, which brought us up to the incredible level of 55. To celebrate this momentous occasion, I figured we were now strong enough to take down a beast so terrifying it is only spoken of in legend. Of course, I'm talking about the legendary Devilsaur. Well, this is how it went. Okay. Shamanistic Rage. Slow him down. Get the Searing Totem out. Okay. Stun the fight. Let's go. Keep him stunned in case we got to move. Keep him slowed down. That's it. Lightning Shield up. Keep it up. Come on now. Searing Totem him. Frost Shock. Into the Ghost Wolf.
Okay. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Don't panic. That's it. That's it. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We still got him leashed. We still got him leashed. Hit that. Hit that. He's coming. Frost shock. Frost shock. Keep running. Keep running. Okay. You're luring him into a false sense of security here. That's it. Get the lesser healings. Mana. Let's go. That's it. Come on now. Keep him leashed. Frost shock. Run. Be a pussy. 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 Okay. Run. Bail. Bail. It's all lost. It's over. We're fucking gone. God damn it.
Let's just say all the rumors were very well earned, because these lizards were not to be taken lightly. After reincarnating and licking our wounds, it was time for us to go to the zone where freshly boosted characters go to die. I am, of course, talking about the Plaguelands. Now you see here, folks, the Plaguelands will always hold a special place in my heart for two reasons. One, as a Wrath of the Lich King baby, it always fills me with joy returning here and getting the sweet nostalgia of remembering the Death Knight starting zone. Two, whenever you reach the Plaguelands, you know that all your hard work up until this point is coming to fruition, as the huge milestone of 60 is just down that scourge-infested road. So after trying my hand at unsuccessfully doing a little streamer PR, we finally returned to the Eastern Kingdoms. Now, as we stood outside the entrance to the Scourge, Scarlet, and Swiper-infested Plaguelands, I gathered all the quests the Bulwark had to offer, and we set off to what was going to be our final leg of our questing journey. This journey saw us fighting skeletons trying to block the entrance to a hallway. Honestly, I really just thought this clip of our shadows fighting downstairs looked really cinematic, so I just had to add it in. It also saw us murdering every Alliance booster that I had the pleasure of coming across. We danced with some scantily cladded blood elves who must have thought I had some money to give them. Little do they know, I am perpetually broke. It also saw us accidentally stumbling upon the location of the Alliance camp in the Plaguelands and being sucked dry by a warlock. Just another beautiful day in the Plaguelands, like I always say. It was now time for us to do something. Something that I'm not the most proud of. It was time for us to defile the tomb of the legendary Uther the Lightbringer. A paladin who, if you didn't know, was actually Arthas's, otherwise known as the Lich King's, former mentor and teacher. After unsuccessfully trying to sully his tomb and then being promptly scolded by his spirit, I had set out to rid the Plaguelands of some skeletal warriors. I also, once again, killed some giant spiders because it wouldn't be a Deadman's World of Warcraft video without some more giant spiders. At this point, I'm starting to feel like a Tauren version of David Arquette. After being forced to deal with my childhood phobias once again, thank you Blizzard, we were then sent after these huge cauldrons that were scattered all over the Plaguelands. These turned out to be an absolute slog of a quest to have to complete. Especially because when you factor in how many people were trying to do these quests and the ridiculously long respawn timer on the named NPCs, it normally ended up being a waiting fest for about 10 to 15 minutes. But finally, after completing the third and final cauldron, we returned to the Bulwark and in the last of the Western Plaguelands quest. With those completed, it was now time for us to enter the eastern section of the Plaguelands. The final zone until we reached the fabled level of 60. And at this point in the journey, the clock was ticking. We only had 2 days left until the portal opens and Azeroth was irreparably changed. With 3 levels remaining, every choice and every second was going to matter. After making our way into the zone, we started immediately working towards finishing off Tyrion Fordring's insane task of killing what felt like hundreds of infected beasts. Which, as a skinner, I shouldn't really be complaining because your boy was making some serious bank. Really, that's actually a lie because I was saving all my leather for TBC, but I would have made bank. We eventually made our way into Light's Hope Chapel, but not before watching an insanely large bat chase down a druid at hilariously slow speeds. Once at the chapel, I immediately was overwhelmed with just how many exclamation points were awaiting us. which honestly is one of the greatest problems to have in Classic WoW. After collecting them all and filling the map up with all those sweet objectives from Questy, we made our way around the zone, killing plague hounds and these overgrown worms, which I gotta say, I actually found kinda cute. I don't know why. I then had to endure being jumped by a gnome warrior as I was trying to quest, which is just typical gnome behavior, am I right? But this made me wonder, why were gnomes even allowed to be warriors to begin with? I feel like it doesn't fit their aesthetic whatsoever. Now, after just recovering from this gnome's descent into villainy, I made my way over to Maris Stead, where the quest giver Nathanos was supposed to be waiting for me. And that would have been the case if the Alliance didn't band together like a bunch of freaks and kill the quest giver, making us have to wait for 30 minutes for him to respawn. With our time now dwindling till the portal opened, I decided to keep moving and head northwest to the troll-infected ruins of Zul'Mashar in search of the evil troll, Amaya. Eventually, we found him, and our fight was actually a lot more difficult than I had anticipated. Okay, all right, we're gonna potion. We're gonna potion here. We're gonna heal. We're gonna not get stunned. We're gonna get screwed out of this here. Okay, we're so dead. We're so dead. It's not even funny. It definitely could have gone better. It definitely could have gone better. The second time, however, now knowing our enemy's sneaky tactics of calling in support, we dragged him away and we were able to make this a more 1v1 interaction. Now this time, much easier. We actually defeated the troll and grabbed his key for the quest. Before heading back and turning in the quest, while still in the northern sections of the zone, I also made an effort to cap the PvP towers for our first PvP-related quest in all of Classic WoW. I actually think Plaguelands is the first zone that I've been in where I've seen any content quest-wise related to PvP whatsoever. Fast forwarding a bit, on a return to the chapel, we had made a frightening discovery, friends.
What the What's this?
You see, apparently in the TBC pre-patch, locations around the world are designated to be attacked by vicious hordes of demon spawn. And us, being the lucky adventurer we are, stumbled upon just that. So did we join into the fray and try and push these demons back into the twisting nethers? Absolutely not. I, like everyone else here, ignored the event completely, choosing instead to stay focused onto our questing grind. But this was not the only event we stumbled upon. You see, on our way back to the west side of the Plaguelands to hand in some of those completed quests, we ran face first into what was quite literally the most fearsome foe I think I've ever seen in Classic WoW up until this point. I am of course talking about a high-ranking demon lieutenant that was sent to Azeroth in search of some mysterious shards. Today was the day that an immovable object was going to meet an irresistible force. This demon may have traveled millennia to reach here, but he has never faced a force as grand as the beef. Our battle was going to be legendary. Well, so much for that. But you see here, the true power of the beef can never be stopped. With the elements and light entrusted into us, we were brought back to warn the chapel of his impending arrival. So, like a cow version of Paul Revere, we made our way to the chapel as fast as Cody's poor little legs could go, trying to warn the soon-to-be unsuspecting victims at the chapel of the cruel fate that awaited them. Unfortunately, by the time we had made it there, it was already too late. The demons had already begun laying waste to everything in sight. Although our attempts at saving everyone were in vain, I slept easier at night knowing that maybe, just maybe, that evil little gnome warrior from earlier was one of the many Alliance who perished that day. Still reeling from the defeat at the chapel, I figured we needed a nice little victory to help uplift our fallen spirits. So I sat out for one of Classic WoW's hardest dungeons. Well, technically 2 dungeons. I am of course talking about Stratholme, where a single wrong move or unlucky mob pool could spell defeat for your dungeon group. This dungeon is split into 2 different sections, one related to the Scarlet Forces, coined the Live section, and the other one filled with undead, called, well, undead. The Live section of the dungeon actually went off without too much of a problem. We forced our way into the dungeon, fighting through the endless droves of Scarlet Forces that were trying furiously to stop us. And as we made our way through and deeper into the dungeon, I was kind of getting a vibe of the Scarlet Monastery dungeons, mixed in with a horde capital of Undercity and kind of meshed together. And to be honest, it was somewhat unsettling and pleasant at the same time. Something about seeing this place, while it's technically still current, instead of the first time I've seen Stratholme in the Calling of Stratholme Dungeon in Wrath of the Lich King, felt kind of special. But eventually, the only challenge that stood before us was the Grand Crusader, Dathrohan. It was time to finally put an end to the Scarlet Crusade in the racist war against our undead brothers and sisters. And after a rage-induced attempt to defeat us, the Paladin's defeat was beginning to surely happen at any moment, when all of a sudden, a major twist came to the surface. The once noble Paladin, Dathrohan, had actually fallen in battle some time ago against the twisted Dreadlord, Balsnazar. The very same Dreadlord then vilely possessed that Paladin's corpse, in an attempt to gather forces to destroy Arthas, the now Lich King, and his fearsome Scourge army. Now revealed in his true form, he was clearly a much, much bigger threat. We did not have time to revel in the fact of this discovery. We were faced with such adversity, but heroes such as ourselves don't back down. Instead, we arise to the occasion, just like we did here. Eventually, we overcame the Dreadlord and his twisted powers, and we were able to banish him back to the twisting nethers, leaving behind the only thing that remained, his colossal cufflinks and the spoils of war, which turned out to be the two-handed sword Demon Shear and the caster necklace Star of Mystaria, both of which were, of course, no use for us. With the live section of Stratholme now completed, it was time to move to the more challenging Undead section. And although I was advised by my chat going in that this was indeed going to be a challenge and to stay on my toes at all times, I must have subconsciously decided that things were going a little too well. For you see, not even 3 minutes into this section of the dungeon, I unknowingly reached down and grabbed the glowing box of tobacco for one of our quests, while my team was busy and preoccupied with finishing up a mob pack. Little to my understanding at the time, this actually starts an event where another mob pack along with the quest boss arrive, and they then quickly went to town on my group and murdered them in mere seconds, leaving me the last surviving member until I too was promptly murdered. You want to know the worst part, friends? It wasn't the fact that I just cost everyone moments of their probably limited playtime. It also wasn't that they all now had a repair bill to pay because of me. It was that this quest was now uncompletable by me and our healer. This obviously must have resonated with the healer as he promptly decided to leave the group. Thankfully, it didn't dissolve into a full group disband and we were able to pick up another healer. Believe it or not, this was actually the only mishap of the rest of the run, and we eventually went on to put these poor creatures who were forced under the Lich King's control to rest, leaving behind the corrupted horseman, Baron Rivendare, remaining. Baron, being one of the only bosses in the entirety of Classic that can drop a mount, meant that regardless of your gear, there is always an element of excitement when you start to see his health bar falling closer and closer to zero. Now, unfortunately for this group, they decided to join up with Azeroth's unluckiest player. Me, on the other hand, I already knew that the mount had absolutely no chance of dropping. And with Baron's defeat, I was unfortunately proven correct. But this meant we had now completed both sections of Stratholme, thus putting to bed a good deal of quests from the chapel and earning us bragging rights for having completed one of Classic's hardest dungeons. Now, making our return to Light's Hope, we turned in the completed quest, which granted us the second to last level of Classic WoW. This was going to be the last time we saw our experience bar until TBC, which at this point was like less than 24 hours away, so it's really not that special, but it sounds good, doesn't it? And what did we do to celebrate our second to last ding? I tried to murder this Alliance booster in broad daylight only to be swiftly punished by the guards. Needless to say, it didn't go well. And I obviously learned my lesson. I immediately ran back and tried it again. And I guess what they say about the definition of insanity must be true. But at this point, I had gathered quite a bit of completed straggler quests all throughout the lands of Azeroth, and they needed to be turned in. And admittedly,
I was starting to have my fill of the Plaguelands. And by doing so, we had now fast-tracked from the beginning of level 59 to halfway through our last level. This is where I got the idea. Instead of slogging through the completely congested Plaguelands, let's go enjoy one of my all-time favorite dungeons, the Black Rock Spire. Quickly, as I headed to Kargath to get the now available dungeon quest for the Spire, I had found a group who had just supposedly briefly started the dungeon. And after gathering the quest and making my way to the entrance of the Spire, I decided to have a little fun. Let's play a quick little prank on this new group. Because as of this point, they had been patiently waiting, eating snacks, and shooting the shit now for a little over 15 minutes by the time I had arrived. After getting inside of the dungeon, the group's warlock was able to conjure a summoning spell, allowing me to skip right to their current location. And this is where I decided to ask if they had completed the first boss, which prevented me from finishing one of the dungeon quests, having already seen in their looking for group post earlier that they had in fact finished the first boss. Now once they had confirmed my question, pretend to say GG's and begin hearthing out. And well, I guess the warlock must have felt a certain way about that.
Bruh.
After having my fun with the group, who were actually filled with some pretty easygoing good hordes, we made our way through the lower section of Blackrock, handing out supreme justice to its residents of evil trolls and orcs alike. You know, there's something about this twisted spire which really makes the vibe of a large climactic Warcraft battle settle in. Albeit not as cool as the upper section, I definitely still enjoyed my time running through these halls for the last time. And before you knew it, folks, we had reached the final boss of the dungeon. Overlord Wormtalok, a fierce dragonkin general who, if you're not careful, can lay complete waste to your party with his devastating attacks and supreme— wait, he's already dead? Yeah, I guess we did kill him pretty quick. It's just kind of wild. With his incredibly quick defeat, we now only had a sliver of experience between us and max level, and I decided, rather than turn in the now completed quest for the dungeon, let's take the advice of someone in the chat and go check out the only zone that I've never actually stopped and seen in Classic WoW, the beautiful zone of Ajara. So me and the chat set out for one final mission before reaching endgame. Explore our last unseen area of Azeroth and ding 60 from the exploration experience. Doing so, we also recapped all of our journeys and our adventures until now. We set out with one mission in this series: get from level 1 to level 60 before the dark portal opens. And friends, at this point, we literally have only hours to spare before the portal opened. This meant, although close, we had succeeded. I also want to take the time to thank each and every one of you for following Beefman's journey up until this point. You have no idea how much it means to me for all the support you have shown up until now. It's been such a wild journey, not only with Beefman's, but the entirety of trying out Classic World of Warcraft for the first time over this last year. It has seriously been one of the most enjoyable and sensational gaming experiences that I've ever had. Well, yes, it's true. I have played different variations of World of Warcraft and other MMOs in the past. Nothing has filled me with the enjoyment and reward of seeing our community grow and prosper. God damn it, I said I wasn't gonna cry. So everyone, enough of my monologuing. We'll save that for the streams. The moment you've all been waiting for. There it is. Guys, we're 60. We just did it. Holy crap. Guys, what an amazing journey it's been. We've seen highs and we've seen lows. I just want to thank each and every one of you guys for being along for the ride. We did it on the Warrior and now we've done it on the Chamois. Everybody, here is to you a big thank you. This is Deadman's and I can't wait to see you in the next What? You thought it was over? Not so fast, friends. Don't be leaving just yet. You're not going to want to miss this. After hearing that ding for the very last time in Classic WoW, we returned to Orgrimmar in order to complete an optional mission that I had set to the side in case we had any spare time left over. I wanted to see Beefman's head into at least one classic raid before heading to the Outlands. So we set out to scour the trade chats in order to find us a raid. And at the point of this recording, it was roughly 2:30 in the morning, and the pickings were obviously going to be rather slim. But believe it or not, after about only 5 minutes or so of searching, this happened. I also went ahead and got one of the most awesome people from our community, Rhoda, to jump in the raid as well, who then promptly took the time to explain to your boy how soft reserving and hard reserving actually works. I, deciding that gear at this point was basically just going to be a bonus, decided to put one of my reserve tokens towards the mount if we were lucky enough to see it. Beefman's side quest of entering a raid was now initiated, so once again we returned to our least favorite zone in all of Classic WoW, Stranglethorn Vale, and we made our way through the dense jungles of the Gurubashi Trolls headquarters. I'm not going to lie to you, I can't tell you how much of this was the 400 milligrams of caffeine coursing through my system, but something about being in a raid with 20 other people on the very last night of Classic WoW and seeing all of our characters and their classic journeys coming to a climactic end together, it was hitting hard enough to make even Sam Elliott shed a tear. With everyone buffed out of our minds and half the raid overgearing the content exponentially, I'll be honest with you, none of these bosses even felt like much of a challenge, but that doesn't detract from just how much fun it was to see the content nevertheless. From Jindo, the dancing clown, to Bloodlord Mandakir and his raptor Ogun, none of these bosses put up much of a challenge for us. And we even managed to snag a few gear upgrades along the way. Guys, look at this, upgrade! Until eventually, it was time to finally get revenge for Uzera's pool boy and destroy the blood god Hakar. Climbing up the stairway to the top really cemented the feeling that something incredibly epic that was going to change the fabric of our reality in Azeroth was about to happen. These were the feelings that I've been craving for so long in WoW. Being able to take down one of its many larger-than-life villains. Seeing this godlike monster staring off into the distance, just begging to be attacked, and knowing all his glorious loot was ripe for the taking, I will say, the dopamine was at an all-time high, friends. After a brief explanation from Rhoda as to when to cleanse the raid of his poison effects, the last battle of our Classic WoW journey had commenced. You see, fighting a target as lore significant and literally larger than life as the Blood God was such an enlightening experience. It felt like I was finally able to make that young Tauren from earlier, the same one who set out to see what lay beyond the grassy fields of Mulgore, proud. And you want to hear the absolute most shocking news that you will hear today? I mean, seriously, are you guys sitting down? Guys, I was literally only a couple DPS away from being the top DPS for the boss fight. All I can say is, when the Wind Fury gods giveth, oh, does it feel good. And after a climactic boss battle that truly felt fitting of a raid, the so-called Blood God was tricked by a couple mortals into absorbing tainted blood. And with one fell swoop, his avatar was banished from Azeroth. With his defeat, it meant everything that we set out to do had been accomplished. There was only one last important thing on my checklist before the portals opened and brought forth a completely new world to Warcraft. I had to go and say goodbye to a couple old friends. Ones that had been with us through thick and thin from the very start of this journey. Thank you, good sir. You've fed our bellies since the start. There's one gentleman. There he is. Here we go. You know, it wasn't so long that was us. Feels like just yesterday it was us, you know, talking to Mancrick, hearing about his womanly troubles. Say goodbye to Mancrick. Now, it was time to head into the Blasted Lands. Stay tuned for Season 2 of Beefman's Journey, where we take our fight straight to Illidan. As always, I appreciate you all for making it to this point in the video. And I want to give a special shout out to the channel members, as each and every one of you are extremely appreciated. So with all that said, if you'd like to see Beefman's journey continue, make sure to subscribe
to not miss out on Season 2. Also, if you would like to stay more up to date, don't forget to drop by the streams every Wednesday through Saturday from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And with all that plugging out of the way, as always, friends, this is Deadman's, and I'll see you in the next video.